It's a term that's used by most of the cold case units across the country that we never forget. We don't ever forget a homicide. A homicide has no statute of limitations in the state of Virginia. We go back and completely review the incident. We start from scratch. The witnesses are re-interviewed. We make phone calls. Every witness is important to a violent crime. Sometimes there's only one phone call that's needed to crack a case. To refresh your memory, it takes maybe showing the crime scene. We'll do that to solve a case.
Our goal within the Division of Police is to solve every single crime we possibly can. Homicides, we want to solve every one that we possibly can. But we need the help of the community. We need witnesses. We need people who don't mind stepping forward and giving us that small piece of evidence that we need to complete the case.
This case has not been solved. We have a killer or killers that are still out there. We are very close to the point where we have exhausted just about every avenue to develop other suspects in this case or additional suspects. We would hope that if there's anyone out there who knows anything about the 1998 murder of Shelly Schantz and Schantz-Ripka, they would please call the Henrico County Cold Case Unit and share that information with us. This was a homicide. On February the 11th, 1998, Henrico County Police was called to a suspicious situation. The officer initially only had bits and pieces of the information. He was told to meet a child care worker at 334 Sleepy Duck Place.
I met Shelly in 1998 when she came to, she made an appointment to have her son enrolled in our school. It was Valentine's Day coming up, and her son had made the most beautiful card, and her son wanted her to see what he had made. And she was in a hurry. And I said, it won't take a minute to run up there and look, because this is very important. And she did. And this card, this beautiful card that he had made, and it said, "I love you, Mommy." And she just made so much over it. And he was so happy. And they left just singing, and she said, "I'll see you in the morning." And everything was just great the day before. Then the next day, he didn't come at his usual time, and he usually arrives about 8 or 8:15. And then I got a phone call from her boss, where she works. And her boss told me that Shelly had not shown up for work. I had the most awful feeling inside because she was so adamant that she would be there at school the next day that I immediately called 911. I had this intuition, it was only by the grace of God that I felt this, that something was terribly wrong.
Once she got there, the officer got basic information and proceeded to walk up to the residence. And again, this was a 2-story home that was on a street that had not even been entered into the county directory as of yet. The officer walks to the front door, knocks on the door, and almost immediately finds that the door is partially open. It's not swung open, it's not kicked in, it's just unlocked and partially ajar. The officer then retreats from the porch after making several calls inside the house, and he walks to the rear of the home. He walks onto a deck and looks into a glass door window, and there he almost immediately sees a white female laying on her back with head injuries. This female was unresponsive to him, and immediately he called for additional units. As they're proceeding into the home, they almost immediately hear a child crying. They again stay focused because they know they have a victim to the rear of the home. They go to the rear of the home, and prior to getting to the female victim, they find a male victim lying in the kitchen, obviously unresponsive also. Once they arrived to the upstairs area, they went to a bedroom and almost immediately find a 3-year-old child in his crib unharmed. Once the police get on scene and establish the type of crime they have, and again, you have a male, you have a female, the investigators are called, and that's where I come in. We also notify our forensics unit.
Yeah, I think about this case real often, basically because they were around our age at the time, and you just kind of, you have cases that stick with you sometimes, and this is one of them.
A video was developed and brought outside, and I was shown the video. And the first thing I was told was that we do not have a firearm present. The scene was almost like a hit, like this was a gangster-style murder. Small caliber weapon. There was no signs of any forced entry to the home. Nothing was missing. The female victim's purse was at the front door, had not been disturbed. And again, almost a very methodical, planned murder. The scene was a very clean scene based on what I have seen and over 30 years of police work. The first victim, Schantz-Ripka, was shot very methodically, one shot to the back of the head.
The wounds to his head indicated to us that whoever had done this knew exactly where to shoot the person to kill them instantly. Common terms, he was dead before he hit the floor.
It appears that whoever came into this scene may have known the victims. There appears to be a chair that's moved away from the kitchen table as if someone sat there behind Schantz-Ripka. We have not yet been able to discern whether he was cooking anything or whether he was preparing or getting ready to prepare something for dinner that night. Obviously, at some point, he had turned his back to his killer, which caused him to be in a position where the killer could approach him from the rear, probably without him knowing it, and put a close-range shot to the left side of his head. The second victim, Shelly Schantz, was found less than 10 to 15 feet away from him in the laundry room. And it appeared that she had been backed into this laundry room and that she had sustained the first round to her chest, which was not an instantaneous death, but was a fatal wound. And that the suspect apparently put a second round in her forehead, killing her instantly. We found that Shelly Schantz had received a phone call from a coworker, and that phone call came in at approximately 8:30 p.m. the night prior to that death, which would have been February the 10th of 1998. Interviewing this individual, we found that he could hear what sounded like two men talking. He was very adamant that it did not sound like the TV set or like in audio. It sounded like two men talking. The caller was told by Mrs. Schantz that I'm putting my child to bed. Could you call me back later? Once Ripka was shot, we feel that Shelly came downstairs after hearing the shot or hearing Alan fall to investigate. Once she gets there and Shelly struggled with him, she actually grabbed the weapon, causing the weapon to fire. And that's why we feel that the first round entered her chest. And again, she was not killed instantaneously, but based on the residue that was on her hands and in the webbing of her hands, we feel that she sustained the chest wound first, fell, and subsequently was killed with the headshot. We saw that on Shelly Schantz was what appeared to be across the right side of her chest a footprint. The impression indicates to me the perpetrator put his foot on her chest, held her down, and obviously killed her with the head wound.
This scene didn't have a lot of blood. There was one small droplet of blood that came from the male victim, and the female victim was laying in a pool of blood, but it was an extremely small pool of blood. That's another thing. It indicates that the person knew how to kill these people.
The thing that we're looking for is the shell casings, the type of weapon that was used. The small caliber gun is the assassin's weapon. In the homicide trade, that's what we call it, the assassin's weapon. It's normally used to present instant death and is easily concealed. And once it enters the skull, it doesn't go through and through. It stays inside the skull and it bounces around, causing irrecoverable injuries. Both victims sustained what we call contact wounds. A small caliber weapon, as the one that was used in this one, had to be literally against the skin. And on Mr. Ripka, the shot was at the base of the skull, entered the brain, the portion of the brain that dealt with mobility. If he had not died instantly, he would have been immobilized. The two shots that Mrs. Schantz sustained were both fatal rounds, to the heart and to the head. Investigation went on to where obviously we're trying to get some victimology related to these two individuals. How did they come to know each other? Because we did find that they were not married, and we also found that they had not been in the Richmond area very long. The common denominator here was that both of these individuals were from the New York area. Alan was from Syracuse, New York, and Shelly was from Poughkeepsie, New York. Both looking for employment in the area, also didn't have a lot of finances to work with. So for a situation of convenience, they moved in together. These two individuals, Mrs. Schantz and Mr. Ripka, we found no criminal records on them. They led good lives. These guys were people that you would want in your community. That's why it's so unusual. We normally can find something in the backgrounds of the victims that would lead us to believe that maybe it's who they were dealing with that caused their deaths. And in this situation, we don't have that.
I think with cold cases, you become more personally involved with the family members, hoping and doing your best with the staff that we have to solve that crime. And you begin to feel the pain that the family members suffer.
And it's really quite brutal. There isn't any, now I've come in with bad news, nothing. It's just, bam. Your daughter in Richmond was murdered. And of course the first thought was, what's happened to her son too? You know, well, you don't think, it's just you're just whacked. And then they said that the person who was staying there was also murdered. And I can't tell you, it's so awful. The word is awful.
You know, I'd love to have my son here. But it's not to be. No reason to believe that anybody would harm Alan. He's just such a waste that this beautiful young man was murdered.
I remember the phone call from my brother and not being able to comprehend. I think he said, it looks like my son's been the victim of a homicide. And it was 12:30 in the morning. And just not being able to comprehend what that meant, you know?
The kids loved him so much, my children, you know. And unfortunately, you know,
It was taken from him.
that was taken from him, yeah, because they adored him, you know, and something to do with Uncle AJ. He volunteered his time and his services for a child burn unit, which he would work with severely burned children, with the other children as well that were terminally ill. He volunteered his time for that. He volunteered his time for many other children activities.
Not something any parent should have to go through. No parent should bury their child. I went through hell the week that Alan was brought home and we buried him. I can't tell you the emotions I felt the first time I saw him in the casket. I mean, Karen can tell you that I gained 10 years in 30 seconds.
We watched him walk in and kind of just like crumpled as he went up to the Alan's casket. And it just...
Well, I myself have been angry ever since that day. I really haven't shed any emotions over it. I've been too angry to. I remember seeing Alan for the first time, and when I walked up to that casket, I punched him. It's brought, there's your sibling rivalry, and of course I miss him. I miss him very much. But I continue to be angry to this day, and that day changed my life forever. And my daughters have told me that time and time again. Ever since that day, Dad, you've never been the same. It hurts. It hurts immensely. I wish I had the same. I guess.
Well,
I wish I could have the emotions that I need, to bring it to a conclusion. But until the murderers are found and justice is served, it's hard for me to shed a tear. I continue to be angry, unfortunately, because it's affected my life in so many ways that I wish it didn't.
last time I saw my son was our wedding, and for the longest time, and up until this week, I haven't been able to look at my wedding pictures because it was the last time I saw my son. I did have a chance to say that I love you. Which I'm grateful for.
I can tell. We have a picture off to the side where we spend most of our time watching television, and I'll look over and he'll be staring at the pictures, and I just know. And he's just like, gets real quiet.
I do spend some time with him. So, like I said, he's in my heart. And never really far away. So.
It's just an incredible waste to have her not be with us now. Her kindness to everything, people, animals, everything. She loved to laugh. She really did. She was, you know.
Just remember the smile, the happy part of her. That's the part that I want people to remember. Of course, that's what we all remember, the very good part.
Loved animals.
Oh gosh, she sure did.
We had so many strays in the house. Birds and all kinds of things. Cats.
Shelly reached out to every kind of being. Yeah, she was in the Big Sister program and had a little sister. She used to go to the nursing homes and visit the old people and related extremely well to them. It was something in her nature that she just cared for people.
There is not a more dedicated mother on this planet, and I say that absolutely, than she was towards her son.
I went into the hospital when he was born. She said to me, "This is the happiest I have ever been in my life, Mom." It meant so much to her. And I think Shelly found her family there. I mean, as you know, Shelly was adopted. And I think this was the fulfillment of, at last, my blood.
She just was very family-oriented and had started her own, and was, I think her ultimate goal, her ultimate dream would be to have a husband and her son help out in the community and be a wonderful asset to any society.
Wonderful thing at the end, she said to me, and she wasn't given to this, she said, "Mom, I just want to thank you for everything, and I love you, and this was the last time we were down here, because I had taken very good care of the baby. And I'm so grateful for that, because I would not want, you know, you don't know what's going to happen. But I'm so grateful that the end of it was meaningful."
We looked at our suspect base. We looked to see who would be in this group capable of carrying out such an act, who would have had maybe firearms training, military training, police training. We're looking for that one piece of evidence to say that this individual would have carried this act out. But again, always go back to the fact that this may have been a paid or a murder for hire. That if the person who came in and did this to these individuals would not have actually been the one who pulled the trigger. It would have been the individual who was paid to do so. So that individual may not be known to police or to family members or friends. Once we got into the investigation, probably about the first 6 hours, we received information that a threat had been made to Shelly Schantz. And that threat was that if you carry me back to court, I would have you killed. A pretty blatant statement. I would have you killed. And again, based on the crime scene that we had, and the murder for hire situation that we're thinking of, the methodical way it was done, how clean it was. Nothing was stolen. This wasn't a robbery. This wasn't a burglary. These guys didn't, or this individual didn't go in here to steal something. He went in there for one particular purpose, and that was to take these two victims' lives. We don't know whether Mr. Ripka was there and probably was not supposed to be there, and that's a strong possibility because the investigation also revealed that he was supposed to be moving and had supposedly have been gone from the residence weeks prior to this incident occurring. So we feel that the killer probably went into the residence, maybe thinking that it was going to be one person there or only two people there, and that being Shelly Schantz and her son. Once we got into the second day of the investigation, and we got a good victimology set up on both individuals or both victims, everything showed that Mr. Ripka had no problems with anyone. And we went back to that threat, and the threat is what we stayed with and what we believe today what caused both of these individuals to be killed. Once we received the threat about Mrs. Schantz possibly being killed if she carried this individual back to court, we wanted to determine at what point was she scheduled to go to court. She was scheduled to go to court on Thursday of that week, or after the murder. It gave us a lot of cause for concern. The circumstances that we're dealing with regarding the threat that was made to Shelly Schantz may not be the right direction. So again, if we can get that phone call to put us in the right direction or give us a witness who may be able to tell us what actually happened there, it'll greatly cause this case to progress. We have gone probably in more directions in this investigation than in any homicide that I've ever been a part of. We have approximately 10 suspects in this investigation. Everybody pretty much is a suspect until we get it solved. We have our top 2 or 3, but there's at least 10 people that would have had motive and would have had opportunity and reason to kill Alan Ripka and Shelly Schantz.
When somebody that you know and love and have grown up with and spent all that time with is taken away from you violently, there's a fear for yourself. There's a fear that maybe this is somebody that knows you. We had an evening while I was still visiting where a car pulled into the alley behind our house, and I was with Mom, and we didn't know who it was, and at that point the power went out and the alarm went off, and we panicked. We had no idea what was going on, and this was about 3 days. And I would say for probably 2 or 3 months after she was killed, standing in the shower, I'd have a panic attack or something. I would just, all of a sudden, I'd have to look out the curtain.
Leaves you very insecure.
Because you don't know. It brings an element into your world that you had no idea was there. That this could happen to somebody that you knew. That somebody could just walk in your house. You have no idea. It is like having another entity in the family. It's like having a living being in your house that you want out, that affects your parents all the time, and it affects the way you think and what you do. And to have this resolved would be extremely important to my whole family.
At the beginning, you don't have anything, but you're just there. But there is a great deal of anger that goes with it. But then it's something that hits you right in the gut. And I don't think I have a lot of anger yet left, but periodically I just want to get that bastard. Nobody does that and walks around, as far as I'm concerned. I feel very strongly about this. You know, you don't walk in and blow two people's lives away and affect the lives of God knows how many and walk away and walk the streets. And I really hope that they're able to put an end to this. My soul, my insides would never heal, but I'd have peace of mind. You know, I would, for one thing, know that my grandson never had to deal with it again.
I'm just hoping that somebody out there hear our plea, listen to this story, and will come forward with any information. Call the Henrico Police Department.
But I think we appreciate the fact that Henrico County has not given up on this case. I think every police officer that worked on this case truly, truly wanted to get this solved. Detective Hewlett has come back from retirement to work on the case. We do hope that someone will finally come forward and justice will finally be done for both Alan and Shelly.
This case is one of the ones that's really close to me. We would love in the cold case unit to give that closure to the Schantz-Ripka families. One of the mottos that we use in cold case that we never forget. This is one of the cases that will never be forgotten. And those who were involved in this in any kind of way or who actually committed the crime, we don't stop working on these cases. We're constantly looking at them. If you think you got away with it, think again. We're not far behind you.